My high school bully now owns half my company. I nearly dropped my coffee when he walked into the boardroom. Chase Williams, my high school tormentor. The guy who made my teenage years a living hell. And now, apparently, the new co-owner of my tech company. Good morning, everyone. His voice was deeper than I remembered, but it still carried the same self-assured tone that used to make my stomach knot up in the hallways of Riverside High. I'm Chase Williams, your new strategic partner. My fingers tightened around my coffee cup as I watched him command the room with effortless charisma. Gone was the Letterman jacket and the cruel smirk, replaced by a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and a professional smile. But I could still see a trace of the boy who shoved me into lockers and accidentally knocked my books out of my hands. Usually while calling me names I'd rather forget. 10 years of therapy and I still wasn't prepared for this moment. Mr. Chen. Chase's eyes locked onto mine, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. It's been a while. Not enough, I muttered under my breath, then cleared my throat. Welcome to Innovate Tech, Mr. Williams. I forced myself to maintain eye contact, refusing to be that scared teenager again. I wasn't aware you had an interest in our tech sector. Chase's lips quirk up slightly. I developed many interests since high school, Liam. The way he said my name sent an unwanted shiver down my spine. I pushed back my chair, determined to establish my authority in this space. This was my company. Well, half my company now, apparently, and I wouldn't let him intimidate me here. Perhaps we should discuss these new interests in private, I suggested, gesturing towards my office. The board can review the quarterly projections while we catch up. The meeting room emptied quickly, my employees no doubt sensing the tension crackling in the air. As the door clicked, shut behind the last person, Chase loosened his tie slightly. You've done well for yourself, he said, walking over to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook downtown Seattle. Though, I can't say I'm surprised. You're always the smartest kid in school. Funny how you never mentioned that while you were busy making my life miserable. The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharp with decade-old pain. Chase turned, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of something that looked like regret in his eyes. But then his professional mask slipped back into place. We were kids, Liam. People change. Do they? I crossed my arms, because from where I'm standing, this feels like an awful lot like another power play. What are you really doing here, Chase? He stepped closer, and I fought the urge to step back. He smelled expensive, like sandalwood and success, and it was doing strange things to my concentration. Believe it or not, he said quietly, I'm here to help save your company. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Save it? Innovate Tech is doing fine. Is it? He pulled out his phone, pulled up a document, and handed it to me. Your Q4 projections suggest otherwise. You're hemorrhaging money on that new AI platform, and your competitors are closing in. Without a significant capital injection and some strategic repository, you'll be underwater by the next quarter. My hand shook slightly as I scanned the numbers. They weren't new to me. I'd been losing sleep over them for weeks. But seeing them laid out so clinically made my stomach turn. So what? This is your way of making amends? I handed his phone back, careful not to let our fingers brush, swooping in to save the gay kid you used to torment. Something dark flashed across Chase's face. This isn't about high school, Liam. This is business. Though, if you're interested in amends, he paused, brushing a band through his perfectly styled dark hair. Maybe we could discuss that over dinner. I stared at him, trying to figure out his angle. The Chase Williams I knew would have never voluntarily shared a meal with me. But then again, the Chase Williams I knew wouldn't have worn a three-piece suit that perfectly highlighted his broad shoulders either. I don't mix business with pleasure, I said finally. Chase's smile turned sharp. Who said anything about pleasure? He headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. 7 o'clock, Liam. I'll have my assistant send you the restaurant details. We can discuss the future of your company. And maybe a few other things, too. The door closed behind me with a soft click, leaving me alone with the racing thoughts and the lingering scent of his cologne. What the hell just happened? Later that evening, the restaurant Chase chose was exactly what I expected. Exclusive, expensive, and elegant. What I hadn't expected was how my breath would catch when I saw him waiting at the bar. his suit jacket discarded and sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. I was not going to notice how good he looked. I was not. "You're late," he said, turning to face me with an amused smile that made my stomach flip. Traitor stomach? Traffic. I slid onto the bar stool next to him, careful to maintain professional distance. "Shall we get a table?" "In a minute," he signaled the bartender. "First, let me buy you a drink." "You still like old fashions?" The fact that he remembered my drink choice from one fundraiser gala 3 years ago, where we awkwardly avoided each other all night, shouldn't have affected me, but it did. "I'm surprised you paid attention," I said, accepting the drink he ordered. Chase's eyes met mine over the rim of his glass. "I pay attention to a lot of things about you, Liam." The way he said it, low and intense, sent heat crawling up my neck. I took a large sip of my drink, welcoming the burn. "Like how you used to pay attention to which hallways I took between classes." The words came out bitter, "so you could be sure to catch me alone." Chase setting his glass down hard enough that the ice clinked. I was a stupid kid, dealing with my own shit badly. Very badly. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect styling. "Look, can we go and get our table? I'd rather have this conversation somewhere private." The hostess led us to the scheduled booth in the back, hoping the dim lights would hide how flustered I felt when Chase chose to sit next to me instead of across. His thigh brushed mine as he settled in, and I had to suppress a shiver. "Do you want to know why I really tracked you down?" Chase turned towards me, his knee pressing against mine. "Why I bought into Innovate Tech? Enlighten me." I meant to sound sarcastic, but my voice came out breathier than intended, because I've spent 10 years trying to figure out how to apologize to you. His hands moved to rest on the seat between us, inches from my leg. 10 years wondering if you'd ever forgive me. 10 years. He paused, swallowing hard. 10 years of trying to convince myself I bullied you because I hated you, and not because I was terrified of how much I wanted you. The world tilted on its axis. "What?" "You heard me." His eyes were dark, intense. I was a coward back then. It took me years to admit who I was, what I wanted, who I wanted. My heart was hammering so hard, I'm sure he could hear it. And now, his hand found mine, under the table, his thumb tracing circles on my palm that sent electricity up my arm. Now I'm not a coward anymore. Now I know exactly what I want. I should have pulled away, should have remembered all the tears, the pain, all the years of therapy. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, drawn into his orbit, like I'd always been, even when I'd hated him. Chase. His name was barely a breath between us. He reached up with his free hand, fingers ghosting along my jaw. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, close enough that I could feel his breath on my lips. "Tell me you don't feel this too." Memories flashed. 16-year-old me pressed against a locker, Chase's face inches from mine, as he threatened to make my life hell. The same electric tension had cracked between us then, but neither of us had understood it. Or maybe we understood it too well. "I should hate you," I whispered. "You should." His fingers slid into my hair, making me shiver. "Do you?" The answer stuck in my throat, because the truth was, under all the pain and resentment, there had always been something else. Something that made my heart race whenever I gotten too close. Something that had made the betrayal cut so deep. A discreet cough interrupted us. We jerked apart as the waiter appeared with menus, and I realized with the start that my hand was still entwined with Chase's under the table. "Would you gentlemen like to hear our specials?" The waiter asked politely, ignoring our flushed faces. "Give us a minute," Chase said, his voice rough, his thumbs still drawing maddening circles on my palm. As the waiter withdrew, reality crashed back. What was I doing? This was Chase Williams, the guy who made my teenage years hell, the guy who owned now half my company, the guy who was looking at me like he wanted to devour me whole. "We should talk about the company," I said weakly, trying to pull my hand away. Chase's grip tightened. "The company can wait." His eyes burned into mine. "We have other things to discuss first." And God help me, but I wanted to have that discussion. Wanted it more than I'd ever admitted to myself. What had I gotten myself into? A week later, I spent a week avoiding Chase as much as professionally possible, which wasn't easy when he kept finding reasons to be in my office. Every time he leaned over my desk to look at reports, his cologne would cloud my judgment, and I remember how close we'd come to kissing in that restaurant. But I couldn't afford to think about that. Not when Innovate Tech needed my full attention. That's when I told myself. Anyway, until Sarah from IT burst into my office. On a Friday afternoon? You need to see this, she said, dropping the tablet on my desk. On the screen was a security photo from a competitor's office building, and there was Chase, shaking hands with Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Corp, our biggest rival. The photo was dated yesterday. My blood ran cold. How did you get this? I have friends everywhere. Sarah crossed her arms. He'd been meeting Reynolds twice a week for the past month. Started right before he bought the Innovate Tech. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening clarity. Of course. This was his plan all along. Gather inside intel, then sell them out to Tech Corp. All the stuff about wanting to apologize, about having feelings for me, just another manipulation. I was such an idiot. My office door opened, and Chase walked in like he owned the place, which, technically, he half did. Liam, we need to discuss the new... He stopped short when he saw my face. What's wrong? I turned the tablet towards him. Care to explain? Chase's face went carefully blank as he looked at the photo. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you're selling us out to Tech Corp. My voice shook with rage. Was that the plan all along? Or did you just decide I was still an easy target? Liam, get out. Let me explain. Get out! He didn't move. Instead, closed the door behind him and turned to Sarah. Give us a minute? Sarah looked at me. I nodded tightly, and she left, shooting Chase a death glare on her way out. Start talking, I said. Chase ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit of his I was starting to recognize. Reynolds approached me 3 months ago about buying out Innovate Tech. When I looked into it, I realized that they were planning on a hostile takeover. They've been quietly buying up shares through shell companies. So you thought you would help them? No, you idiot! Chase stepped closer, frustration evident in every line of his body. I bought in to stop them. I've been feeding Reynolds false information, making him think I'm on his side, while I tracked down all their other shell companies. I couldn't tell you because I needed your trust. It sounds plausible. It also sounded like the exact kind of story someone would make up when caught. Prove it. Chase pulled out his phone, pulled up some emails and handed it to me. As I read them, my hands started to shake. He was telling the truth. The emails showed a clear trail of Chase systematically uncovering Tech Corp shell companies and blocking their moves. He'd been protecting innovative tech. Protecting me. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Would you have believed me? His voice equally soft. You can barely trust me to be in the same room with you. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, his face hardened. I have to take this. It's my father. I watched as he answered and stepped aside. Even from across the room, I could still hear the anger in the voice on the other end. No, Dad, I'm not discussing this again. Because it's my money to invest. That's not why, and you know it. Chase's knuckles were white all around the phone. I don't care what your golf buddies think. No, I'm not staying away from him. My breath caught. They were talking about me. Because I'm done living my life by your rules. Chase shouted suddenly. I'm done pretending to be straight to protect your reputation. I'm done hurting people. He cut himself off, glancing at me. I have to go. He hung up and slumped against the wall, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. Your father still doesn't know, I asked softly. Chase laughed briefly. Oh, he knows. He's just been pretending he doesn't for the past 5 years, trying to keep setting me up with his friends' daughters, threatening to cut me off whenever I show interest in men. He met my eyes. He particularly opposed my involvement with you and Innovate Tech. Why me specifically? Because remember how I used to talk to you in high school? Says he always knew you were the reason I turned out wrong. Chase's smile was pained. He's right about one thing. You did change everything for me, just not in the way he thinks. The weight of the shared history hung between us heavier than ever. Chase. His phone buzzed again. Another call from his father. Chase rejected it with a sharp gesture. He's threatening to pull back my backing from my investment in Innovate Tech unless I step away from the company and from you. My heart hammered. What are you going to do? Chase straightened up, his jaw set. I'm going to tell you the whole truth about Tech Corp's plans. Then, I'm going to call my father back and tell him exactly where he can shove his money. And then, he took a step towards me, eyes intense. Then we're going to figure out how to save this company together. It was everything I wanted to hear, which is exactly why I couldn't trust it. I need time, I said, to think, to process all of this. Chase nodded slowly. I understand. He headed for the door, then paused. Just don't take too long. Some decisions can't wait forever. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time staring at nothing. 10 years ago, Chase had chosen his father's approval over being true to himself. Now, he was choosing me, choosing us over everything. The question was, could I trust him? 3 days later, 3 days after Chase's revelation, all hell broke loose. It was the middle of a video call when my screen suddenly went black. Then every monitor in the office flickered to life with the same message. System compromised. My phone rang. It was Chase. Don't panic, he said before I could speak, but TechCorp just launched their cyber attack. They tried to access our prototype design. My heart stopped. The AI platform prototype? Our company's future? Was vulnerable. How did they? Marcus figured out I was playing him. Chase's voice was tight. He sent me a message this morning. Said if I don't agree to buy out by midnight, he'll destroy everything you've built. I gripped my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. So, does he have proof of our meetings? Videos? Photos? Enough to make it look like I was orchestrating corporate espionage from the inside. He'll release them if I don't comply. Chase paused. It would ruin both of us, Liam. Your reputation, my career, everything. The irony wasn't lost on me. Once again, Chase's actions could destroy my life. Only this one, he'd done trying to protect me. Come to my office, I said. Now! He arrived. As I was organizing our emergency response team, Sarah was already there, fingers flying over a keyboard as she tried to protect our servers. Their attacks is sophisticated, she reported, but I recognized the pattern. It's the similar code they tried to use on Mechatech last year. Chase's eyes lit up. Mechatech? That's it! He pulled out his phone. Marcus tried the same hostile takeover with them. They fought him off, but the case was settled quietly. He settled typing rapidly. I know someone there who owes me a favor. I watched him work, struck by how different he looked from a polished businessman who walked into the boardroom weeks ago. His tie was loose, sleeves rolled up, hair messy from running his hands through it. He looked real, human. Got it, he said firmly. Mechatech's legal team is sending over the case files. And? He smiled grimly. Turns out they kept the evidence of Marcus's illegal tactics. Evidence they used because of the settlement. Hope flickered. Can we use it? Not legally, but his phone chimed with a new message, and his face went pale. Shit! What? He handed me his phone. There was a phone of us at the restaurant. Chase's hand on my jaw, our faces inches apart. The message below it was from Marcus. Imagine the headlines. Tech Mongols seduced by a corporate spy. Your father would love this, wouldn't he, Chase? My stomach churned. He's trying to blackmail you personally now. He's trying to blackmail both of us. Chase's voice was cold. He knew about our history. Probably had someone dig up our old high school records. He's painting this as a long con. Poor gay CEO. Manipulated by his reformed bully. The unfairness of it all hit me like a physical blow. Everything I've built, everything I'd overcome, reduced to a tabloid headline. I won't let him do this. Chase said quietly. I won't let him hurt you again. Not because of me. Before I could respond, Sarah cursed. They've passed our first firewall. I need help! The next few hours were a blur of emergency meetings, frantic coding, and desperate phone calls. Our tech company worked to fortify our defenses, while Chase and I strategized. Wait, I said, suddenly staring at Mechatech's files. Look at this pattern. Marcus always attacks through shell companies, right? But he used the same law firm to create them. Chase leaned in over my shoulder, his presence warm and steady. The shell companies are the weak link. If we can prove the pattern, we can show the systematic corporate terrorism. I turned to face him. Our face is close, but we'd need access to their law firm records. A slow smile spread across Chase's face. Remember Jeremy Blake from high school? The guy who used to help me with math? The one who stopped bullying me in front of First? Yeah, he works as a law firm now. Chase was already pulling out his phone. and he's been trying to make amends for our high school behavior for years. I grabbed his wrist before he dialed. Chase, this is dangerous. If it backfires, his free hand covered mine, warm and sure. I know, but I'm done letting fear and consequences stop me from doing what's right. His eyes met mine, intense and honest. I'm done being a coward, Liam. The office was chaos around us, alerts blaring from every computer, our entire company under attack, and all I could focus on was the feeling of his hand on mine, and the absolute certainty in his voice. Make the call, I said. Chase squeezed my hand before once letting it go. As he dialed, his father's number flashed on the screen, his 15th missed call of the day. We had until midnight to save everything we've built, to provide ourselves, to face our past, and fight for our future. And somehow standing beside Chase in the middle of the storm, I felt stronger than I had in years. A few hours later, Jeremy's evidence was a gold mine. By 11 p.m., we had everything we needed to prove Marcus's pattern of corporate terrorism. Chase's father had finally stopped calling, but the silence felt ominous. Ready? Chase asked, straightening his tie as we prepared to video call Marcus. I nodded, trying to ignore how gorgeous he looked in the soft light of my office. Sleeves rolled up, determined, burning in his eyes. Ready? Marcus's smug face filled the screen. Gentlemen, come to accept my generous offer. Actually, Chase's voice was steel wrapped in silk. We have a counter proposal. He shared his screen showing the evidence we compiled, 15 companies in 3 years. Marcus all attacked the same way, all traced back to your pet law firm. Marcus's smile faltered. The SEC would be very interested in this pattern, I added. Not to mention the press. Tech giant's criminal empire exposed. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? You're bluffing. Marcus's face had gone pale. You have no proof. We have everything. Chase leaned forward, including your conversation with my father about me infiltrating Innovate Tech. That was sloppy, Marcus. You should have used a more secure messaging app. I saw Chase a surprising look. He hadn't mentioned this piece of evidence. So, here's what's going to happen. Chase continued. You're going to back off permanently. And if a single word about me or Liam or our history leaks to the press, this evidence goes public. Are we clear? Marcus's jaw worked. Your father won't. My father! Chase's voice could have frozen hell. Doesn't control me anymore. Neither do you. After Marcus hung up, defeated, the office erupted in cheers. We'd done it. Innovate Tech was safe. I turned to Chase, my heart pounding. Your father was involved? I found out this afternoon. His eyes met mine. Vulnerable, despite our victory. He and Marcus golfed together. When Marcus realized I was double-crossing him, he reached out to my dad. They plan to use our history to discredit both of us if necessary. Chase, I should have told you immediately. But he ran a hand through his hair. I was afraid it would be the last straw. I thought you'd never trust me again if you knew my own father was involved in trying to destroy you, and I couldn't bear it anymore. Because he took a shaky breath. Because somewhere between hating myself for hurting you in high school and falling in love with you, with the incredible man you've become, I realized you've been the best thing that ever happened to me, even if I don't deserve you. The office around us faded away. You knew, in high school. Why do you think I was such a mess around you? His laugh was soft, self-deprecating. You were brilliant, and brave, and absolutely yourself, and I was terrified of what I felt, so I lashed out. It's not an excuse. Nothing excuses how I treated you. But God, Liam. His hands curved around my jaw. Just like at the restaurant, I've been half in love with you since you stood up to me in 10th grade and told me being gay wasn't a weakness. I remembered that day. It was right after he shoved me into the lockers, and instead of crying, I snapped and told him that my sexuality made me stronger because I had the courage to be myself. He looked so shocked, so lost. Now I understood why. When I saw your company was in trouble, he continued, I thought maybe, finally, I could make things right. Be the man you deserved back then. But I screwed it up again. Kept secrets, trying to protect you, and I kissed him. He made a surprised sound against my mouth before pulling me closer, kissing me back with 10 years of pent-up longing. His fingers tangled in my hair. His mind gripped his shirt, and everything else disappeared. The office, our victory, the years of pain between us. There was only this, only us, finally being honest with ourselves and each other. When we broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry it took me so long to be brave enough to say it." "Just promise me one thing," I murmured, running my thumb along his jaw. "Anything. No more secrets. No more trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. We face everything together from now on." His smile lit up his whole face. "Together," he agreed, and we kissed again. Conclusion. 6 months later. "Your father's here," I said, straightening Chase's tie before the shareholders' meeting. Chase caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. Let me see," he said softly. "I'm done hiding." We walked into the boardroom hand in hand, ignoring my father's glare. Our announcement of Innovate Tech's record profits and successful new AI platform launch was met with applause. Marcus's attempt to threaten other companies had been quietly exposed, his reputation in ruins. Looking at Chase now, confident, kind, and unashamedly himself, it was hard to see the scared boy who had hidden behind a cruelty all those years ago. But maybe that was the point. We'd both grown. We'd both changed, both learned to be brave enough to love. "Ready to go home?" Chase asked as the meeting ended, wrapping an arm around my waist. I leaned into him, smiling. "With you, always." Sometimes the worst thing in our past led to the best things in our future. Sometimes our bullies become our biggest offenders. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to try, our enemies become great love stories of our lives. Chase and I are living proof of that. The end. Question for the listener. Do you believe people can change truly, like Chase did? What do you think of the key moment that sparked this transformation? Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.